You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
I haven't read your book. I've got a million books here. I have to admit, I just haven't got round to it yet.
I don't blame you, it's big.
It's a big book. I mean, like, that's a doorstopper, isn't it?
It's, it didn't get the message across because the whole point of making it, or writing it rather, was to get a message across. And of course, it turned into such a big thing that nobody read it. So you don't get a message across if people don't read it. If it had been about, tenth size, I might have persuaded a few people to read it, but I had fun doing it and really quite enjoyed it. And it was therapeutic and it got a lot of anger out. And that worked. I can tell the story of why I wrote it eventually, if you like.
Yeah, well, I mean, a good rant is always good, and it's always good to get things off your chest. I did a Substack recently about why I don't fucking consent.
Yeah, sorry.
And it was an epic rant, and I just felt really good about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did, yeah. Do you know what it reminded me of? I don't know whether you're a John Lennon fan, but his first solo album, it's got a track on it called God.
No.
And he goes through it saying, I don't believe in this, and I don't believe in that, and I don't believe in that and the other. And he goes on like that. It's a fantastic track. But he goes through, I don't believe in Jesus, I don't believe in the Beatles, I don't believe in, and it reminded me of that. So being a John Lennon fan,
yeah,
good person to follow.
Some people said it was quite poetic, and I didn't go out to write it as to be poetic. I just wanted to get things off my chest.
Yeah.
Trust me, it could have been longer. There's a lot of things I'm not happy about. But anyway. Yeah. So listen, I was asking you about how old you are. Remind me, how old are you?
68, 69 in July.
I'm going to be 50 in July.
I saw. You're going to have a celebration, aren't you?
Well, I'm trying to organise it, yeah. Well, happy birthday to you, buddy.
Thank you.
So when did you retire? You retired in 2013?
Yep. So we're getting on for 12 years.
So how old were you then when you retired?
58.
So that's early.
It is. I had decided right at the beginning of the career that I would retire as soon as the money was okay.
Yeah.
As soon as I could afford to retire, I was out. Because I knew medicine wasn't everything. And I had the world to see, lots of things to do, and I got on with it. I did a huge amount of traveling in the first few years. Still had an interest in medical politics and, general politics. And that's what's taken over some of my life since, but I don't let it dominate it because it's too depressing. But left early. I don't know whether I was suited to general practice or even being a doctor, frankly, but it was a good way of earning money. And I think by the end of it, I was appreciated and did a good job. So I went out on a high before I had any complaints come along. And,
Well, you probably lived longer than your colleagues, because those people who stay right to the bitter end and then retire tend to die within 2-3 years of a heart attack and cancer.
Absolutely. We all know those statistics, don't we?
Yeah.
Go back a generation.
Not just statistics. I know people.
Yeah, well, true. But I mean, the statistics of a generation ago where you retired at 65, died at 67, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what pensions were based on, that nobody was going to collect them.
Yeah, right. Talking about pensions, I mean, you must have had the old final salary pension scheme, no?
Yeah.
So that must have been, 100,000 a year you're on now?
No, not quite. But it's not far off.
But it's a good amount that you're living on.
Oh, yeah. And that was produced by, the 2004 contract, as much as anything, where they bribed us and got, started the demolition of general practice, got rid of our out of hours part of the contract and bribed us in a huge way with different payments for doing rubbish, basically.
So basically, I listened to your Richie Allen podcast, and can I be honest with you, there's a lot I didn't agree with.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't... if everybody agreed with it wouldn't be fun, would it?
So let's make it fun. Do you want to make it fun? Should I dive in?
Go in.
So I think you've got good intentions, and I think you're a good human being, and I think you're right about calling out all the BS that's in the NHS, and I think you're right about what's happening, but I think you've got big blind spots.
Yeah, willing to learn.
So the blind spots. So let's actually, before we talk about the blind spots, why don't you first of all tell me and the listeners what's going wrong with the NHS? Because you're very good at that, and I appreciate all the things you're saying because I've been going on about that. But what's wrong with the NHS today?
Well, it's been turned into a profit-orientated corporate power grab, basically. Going back to neoliberal origins, 1979. I qualified in 1979. Thatcher came along. I knew from the fact that she was a Hayek and Milton Friedman disciple that the NHS was going to be in her targets. I had an MP called Anne Whittaker, who you may remember, notorious. Got to know her quite well. She was determined to get rid of the NHS. So I went through a phase of fighting that. And I could see when Ken Clark came along, the provider purchaser split, that what they were up to. Most people didn't. Most people in my profession didn't. So splitting off and making it commercialised and corporate is the main problem. It's a corporate entity, isn't it? It's a hollowed out shell now with an NHS logo, which they flogged off to anybody.
Yeah, I love that little sticker.
Yep.
NHS.
Yep. And people just don't know when they walk under the door with it, through the door with it above, that, they're going into a private clinic. I had an eye operation last year, and I said, right, send me to the local hospital. You can't. It's all privatised now. If you don't go to this clinic, you can't have it. So I had to go to a private clinic to get it done. And the finance is one of the things that's incredibly wrong. 200 billion rather, over the last 10 years has been spent on the market. 100 billion has gone to private providers. Now there are 250 companies providing 2,495 services, costing the taxpayer 29 billion. And do you know how many contracts that takes? 53,000 contracts are written to put those in place.
Wow.
Now, they say the NHS is short of cash. It's not short of cash. It's just going to the wrong people.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great example. I brought up eyes a minute ago. There's a study group called the Centre for Health and Public Interest. Very good group of people based in Brighton. They've done a study on eyes and what's happened to eyes in the NHS. And this is typical of what's wrong, to answer the question. 5 eye providers like Specsavers do great adverts, but they're basically milking us, milking the taxpayer. 5 companies have taken 553 million quid from the NHS and made 169 million profit. Now, all right, if you do believe in the market and things, give them a little bit of profit, but 169 million, what can you do with 169 million? A huge amount of things. And that's just the eyes.
Yeah.
Take all the other specialties.
Hip replacements, knee replacements.
The whole lot. All the low-hanging fruit that the private sector want to go for.
Yeah.
They won't touch the complicated stuff, of course.
Acute medicine.
They go for that.
They won't touch acute medicine. 100% not.
That's where, that's what's so much wrong with the NHS. And I can't defend the NHS as it is now, but I can blooming well defend what it should be and what Bevin wanted it to be. And, I could talk about that for days because, that's what I fully believe in. And when I qualified, I saw this under threat. I estimated that, or I have estimated that out of the 77 years of the NHS, probably we've had 7 years of a government that was sympathetic to the actual founding principles. Just 7 years. There was a good health minister in the 60s called Kenneth Robinson. Frank Dobson wasn't bad, but Blair got rid of him when he was too pro-NHS and didn't want to fight, didn't want the market. But, we've had people in charge that basically don't believe in the NHS, and they've spent a huge amount of time trying to get rid of it. And this goes back from preconception. As soon as the NHS came along, the insurance companies and a lot of right-wing doctors, well, most doctors actually, set up a thing called the Fellowship for Freedom in Medicine, which was fighting the NHS even before it was born. And then, of course...
Did you say right-wing doctors?
Yeah. Most
are you
fairly right-wing, aren't they? I think.
Yeah. Right, okay. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
By my definition, anyway. People won't agree with my definition of right-wing, perhaps.
Are you a socialist?
Yeah.
Are you a communist?
No. I don't know what communism means, really. So, but I do believe in central supplies and things like that, and socialism in that way.
So that's where we disagree.
Yeah, I can tell. I've listened to your podcasts. Yeah.
So I don't believe in centralisation.
No.
I actually don't believe in the NHS. Do you know when when the politician said, how'd you get the doctors to sign up to the NHS?
Stuff their mouths with gold.
Stuff their mouths with gold. What does that tell you?
It tells us that money rules, basically.
Yeah, no.
Money.
So before that, do you know why there was resistance to the NHS? There was a lot of doctors very resistant. Do you know what the biggest resistance was about? It wasn't money.
Well,
the reason why they resisted it was because of fear of loss of independence.
Yeah, they thought there could be state doctors.
And control of their practices. Now, my friend, Paul, it's exactly what's happened. So doctors, they were doctors before. They worked in charities. They worked for factories. They worked independently. There's a market. You could go and choose who you would go and see for your doctor, your GP, your family doctor. If you're a crap one, they wouldn't go to them. If you're a good one, they built a loyalty, a fan base, right? It wasn't a monopoly. You had choice of who you could go to see. And it was also, that's what happens. If you're not a good doctor, no one's going to come and see you. If you're a good doctor, they are going to see you. But they could practice independently and they had autonomy. And the only way Bevan could get them to sign up and say, right, you're going to be the centralized system is to literally bribe them. Now, fast forward today, those people who were resisting the NHS, saying we were going to lose our independence and our autonomy, they were right. Because now you've got a centralized system, which has been working over the decades, to the point where doctors are tick boxers, following protocols and guidelines, have no clinical autonomy, and have no clinical independent practice, and are simply doing Big Pharma's bidding, which is what the politicians have engineered.
Yeah.
So how's the NHS a good thing?
Because that's not the NHS, is it? That's not the NHS.
But it is.
Well, it is now, of course, but it's not the NHS that I would want, and it wasn't the NHS that I actually entered.
But you said it was 70s. Only 7 years where it was sympathetic. But this is what I'm trying to... The system has been designed where it can only become more centralised.
Yeah, it's been demolished. And it, the N in the National Health Service, national is not national, the H is not a health service, and the S is not a service, it's a business. And I'm not trying to defend that. I can't. I don't want to. It's the first 1,000 days of the NHS, before the right wing of the Labour Party shat on Bevan, basically, by introducing charges. He spotted it immediately. It wasn't a financial thing. It was ideological. Gateskill, the right-wing Chancellor of the Exchequer, saved 13 million out of a budget of 4,000, just by wanting to produce charges for eyes and dentistry. So it was an ideological argument. He was not happy with the NHS, or were most of the politicians since, as I say. But if I go back to when I first started practicing, I was, as a GP, I was totally independent. I was at the point where my colleagues, this is more towards the end of my career, my colleagues in hospital medicines were being suspended. They were being reported to GMSC for trying to whistleblow, for doing things and complaining about things.
So what do you mean? GP, they were being referred to the GMC for what?
Oh, spurious, made-up charges. There were several in my health authority very good surgeons that sort of suddenly found themselves suspended, because they supposedly did something or their figures weren't right. And they were basically forced out because they were sort of whistleblowers in a way. They were complaining.
Like me.
Yeah. But I, as a GP, could tell them where to go. I was completely independent. I could tell them to get stuff. And that is, now what is not the case because they brought GPs under control as well, obviously.
So this is what I want to talk about. One of the things you were saying on Rich Allen is like, you don't believe in private practice and they're all corrupt and bribery and...
Not all.
Well, you kind of said that. I've got the quotes. I've got it on my phone. Yeah, you did. You said, I'm not a believer. And I was like, oh, wow, that's... Because it's saying something when you've admitted yourself you've never worked in private practice.
No, that's true. But I don't think doctors and money mix, or they shouldn't mix.
Okay, but as a GP, were you an NHS employee?
No, but I didn't have shareholders. The money was dictated to me.
I'm not saying that. Were you a private, independent practicer with a contract?
Yeah, I didn't want to be, but that was the only system.
So in effect, you are a private practitioner who's just got a contract with the government to take money.
That's true, but when you mix doctors and money that interfere with their clinical judgment,
100%,
which I didn't have, then that's where the trouble arises. There is only a few countries where doctors aren't incentivized to do more investigations than perhaps necessary, operate more than necessary. Italy, Spain, Scandinavian countries and Canada. That's about it.
So when we talk about the private practice here, I think we don't actually have a proper private practice. So in some respects, you are right, because you talk about insurance companies, and I agree with you 100% when we're talking about insurance companies. But I want to clarify actual practice, private practice. The kind of private practice that I practiced, and many of my colleagues do, like Ian McDermott, 100% in the private sector, the way I was in the last few years, and why actually we're more ethical than any goddamn NHS doctor. And I just want you to have an open mind.
I have really.
And do you see what I mean? Because
I've got friends
I'm going to tell you stories and you'll understand. It's more nuanced and complicated than you might think. And one of the things that when I was listening to you talk to Rich Allen was, the insurance companies are bad, Big Pharma is bad, politicians are bad. What about GPs? Do you not think GPs have got a role to play in all of this?
Yeah, particularly now. There are so-called, in inverted commas, entrepreneurial GPs that have gone back to the 50s where they do bugger all, sitting in an office, employing slaves and paramedics and the so-called physician's assistants. They're creaming off huge profits. It's not right.
I don't think it is now. I think it was 1990 it all started with the General Medical Services contract when it was incentivized to start immunizing people and giving certain things. And, you will lose your clinical autonomy. You will hit these targets and in return you'll get money. And then I think it was 2004, you had the QOF system, the Quality and Outcomes Framework.
Yes, that's it.
And then again, that was targets, blood pressure, diabetes, immunization.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of recurring theme. Bevan shoved gold down the doctor's mouths and they keep doing that. That's a trick that works. You keep paying GPs to take the money, have the nice pensions, have the bonuses, and in return, you give away and sell away your soul, your clinical autonomy, and your right to treat patients the way you should do. And you said at one point, the young doctors are to blame. No, I think it's doctors of your generation. You retired early, took the money and went, I've had enough. But where were your colleagues saying, no, this is not how we practice medicine. I'm going to maintain my independent practice. You can take your money and shove it. We're doctors first.
Yeah.
Your profession sold out.
Absolutely. And I blame our leaders for that as well as the workforce.
Rank and file and leadership.
Yeah, the leadership. The BMA just kowtowed to the government left, right and centre for money, basically. They had principles until the price was right. And when the price was right, their principles disappeared. And that was the BMA leadership. And one thing I learned...
And rank and file.
And, well, they've just followed, but they also could see the money there.
The only time the doctors go out and march is when they're not happy about their money.
Yeah.
Right? Where were they marching? For mandates, COVID jabs?
Yeah.
Where were they marching when they said we don't want these targets and quaffs telling us how to practice hitting targets? I've got a GP who retired and say, oh yeah, you're right. You know, the screen comes up and it says, oh, next patient, make sure you give them high blood pressure medication. You know, or, you know, if you're not prescribing enough, you get pulled up and said, why are you not prescribing enough? We're not going to get our target and we're not going to get our practice. I'm sorry. It's not just the leadership. Every goddamn doctor who took the money and stayed quiet and lost their ability to practice proper medicine and treat the patient is guilty.
Yeah. And I went to conference after conference after conference and was totally frustrated that this is all they talked about. They didn't talk about, you know, what was happening to the NHS as a body, as a system. You know, they weren't particularly interested. They were interested in exactly what you say. And what I learned is your elders are not always wiser.
No.
And the elders that I listened to and kowtowed down to and was perhaps a little bit too shy of criticising, I should have laid into them, but I didn't. And here we are.
Here we are. So, thank you. So we do agree then. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, I wrote about also the explosion in the use of physician associates. And on the surface, it looks like a great idea. You know, you're taking the pressure off the doctors, you know, taking away some of their routine, mundane tasks, just, you know, so they can focus on their specialized work. But it's not, because these are less experienced, less qualified, less confident, totally beholden to their employers, totally following protocols and guidelines, total rule followers, box checkers and protocol adherence, and they're technicians, not clinicians, right? And the problem is, you know, if you thought it was bad enough having a compliant workforce like doctors are today and have been for the last few decades, it's going to be even worse with this new generation of physician associates. But again, it's doctors to blame. They've allowed this. So I remember as a medical student back in the 90s, my consultant saying to me, the key word in my title is consult. I consult. I'm autonomous. I'm an independent practitioner. Ahmed, the landscape is the managers are going to dictate, the politicians and the managers are going to tell us what to do. And amongst them are doctors who are managers. Do not let them make you a technician. I'll never forget this.
Yeah.
Prof. Hamlin, Mr. Wilkinson, God, so many. You're a surgeon, you're an artist, you're a clinician, you're independent. Don't become an automaton and a technician. But doctors have become exactly that. And now the government's like, well, we don't need to train and pay these people as much just to follow rules and orders and protocols. Let's just get a bunch of cheaper people who'll do it.
Yeah. And there's a good reason for that as well, of course.
Yep.
I mean, 93% of the first contacts of patients are with GPs for 7.5% of the budget.
Yep.
Now, that sounds a bargain because that's 42 pence per person per day for their primary care services. But actually, one of the reasons they don't want GPs anymore is because they spend a lot. They refer a lot and they get the secondary care services going. If you get rid of the most experienced person as a first line and put the least experienced person in who just sits there in front of a computer screen and follows algorithms, the patient goes round and round in circles, doesn't get anywhere, and they don't spend any money. And that's one reason they're unemployed GPs now, because they're being bribed again to take on physicians associates because they get money for taking on physicians associates, but they don't get money for taking on GPs.
And what do? And are they marching? Are they saying, no, this is the death of our profession? No. We are screwing our younger generation. Yeah. Do you hear any of the doctors saying this?
You don't. But in the generation that now I'm above and, you know, that have followed me, there is this sort of memory legacy, isn't there? You know, nobody remembers what the NHS was like. They only now go into it from the last 10 years or so, knowing it as it is now.
Yeah, but see, this is what I mean. Like, so doctors allowed clinicians to dictate how long they could talk to their patients for, stripped the consultation down, stopped them from doing home visits, stopped them from following families, children, grandchildren, parents, took away all of that, dictated to force immunization down people's throats and statins and high blood pressure medications and whatnot.
Well, GPs have been de-skilled in a big way as
well.
Totally
de-skilled. And so what's happened is doctors, GPs, have dug a hole, a grave, clambered in many respects, started filling the soil themselves. And when People like me come along and you and say, hey, that's a bad idea. They mock and ridicule us. And now they're being literally, the spade is just putting the last bit of dirt on. I honestly, it's the death of the medical profession. And for the longest time, Paul, I mourned it, felt sad about it, but I don't actually. Because you know what? You reap what you sow. And that's what's happened now.
No, I can't disagree with anything you said there. But let's start from here rather than look back and who's to blame and say, you know, can we build a better system? And I think we can. We should be able to. We're up against it, of course, and we're not going to get anywhere with the present political climate and politicians and the lack of democracy that allows us to do these sort of things, and the media who don't report it. Take what's happening in A&E. You know, 900,000 unnecessary deaths in the last 10 years have happened because of austerity and people sitting in corridors not getting to the wards to be treated. You know, I don't know how many that is per day, but when COVID came along, the fear factor was, oh, look, we've had so many deaths.
Yeah.
You know, headlines on the BBC, 100 deaths today of COVID. Why don't they put 100 deaths today for people sitting in corridors not getting treated? Because they're not interested.
Amen. And they're in the NHS. That's happening.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's a scandal, absolute scandal. And it goes back to people only complain when it happens to them.
Right. Let me explain something as well.
The communitarianism bit, isn't it?
Yes. Now, next thing, you talked about, GP. Now we talked about the financial incentivization, how the doctors, the GPs have literally taken the money. They continue to take the gold and sell out their younger colleagues. They have shat on their younger profession. Instead of saying, right, we're in a more senior position, all they care about is collecting their pension and getting away. And you know what? The shit show, well, the younger generation can pick up. And frankly, it's disgusting the way the more senior doctors, consultant surgeons, consultant physicians and GPs have behaved, because like you said, the younger generation don't know any better. They're coming out of university, indebted, 50,000, 80,000 pounds. They just want to pay off their debt and start their young career. The real people who should have been protecting the NHS, if it was to be protected, should have been the seniors, and frankly, complete dereliction of their duties. They just walked off and went, not my problem. Someone else can deal with that. And that's, again, back to our profession. I can't tell you how disappointed I am.
Yeah, and me as well. To defend myself, I was swimming in the sewer of the only sewer available. There was nowhere else to swim. It was the way the job was, and I had to do it or just get out.
And you got out?
And I did get out, yeah. And it's got a hell of a lot worse in the 12 or so years since I left, talking to colleagues.
Do you not think two things either happen? You stay in the system, and frankly, to survive and not have a mental breakdown and die of a heart attack, you just stop giving a shit. You stop caring. Because you can't do that. Yeah. Or you hold on to caring and trying to do the right thing, but you burn out, you get a heart attack, you get desperately sick.
Yeah.
Do you not agree with me?
Absolutely. And I spent, most of my career in medical politics, trying to fight the people I disagree with, went into national politics to try and fight the people I disagree with. And it nearly drove me mad. I mean, I was waking up in the middle of the night, and lying there, frustrated, angry, fed up, and it was doing my health no good. Bob Gill and I, Bob Gill.
Love him.
We stood for Parliament 10 years ago under an NHS ticket, the National Health Action Party, which pretty defunct. In fact, they got rid of us because we were too effective.
You got in the mainstream media newspapers.
We did.
I read about that.
Yeah. And we stood for Parliament in 2015. Nobody listened. And I was quite fed up after that. So I thought, well, what else can you do? I've tried to fight all this, what I believe in all these years, got absolutely nowhere. Then I was on holiday and lying around thinking, well, write a book, get a message across that way. And that's where the book, The Deceit Syndrome, came from. And I tell you, it was so therapeutic, and it stopped me having a breakdown, really, because I could get my frustrations and anger and everything out in that book. And it did me a world of good.
Because you care.
Yeah, I think if you do get around to reading it, you'll see how much I care, because the protagonists and people are based on, what you write, what you know, don't you? And you'll see what, the story as it was for me.
Yeah, the story is the NHS has been hollowed out, and over the decades, more and more autonomy, and it happened right from the beginning, right from Bevan's time. Autonomy was starting to be taken away from you, and it's done slowly and then accelerated. It's like a slow boiling frog, and that's why my issue with NHS, it was only ever going to be like that. And what you're saying is, but at the beginning it was lukewarm and it was really nice. Yes, but it was still a pan that was going to get heated up. That was a plan the whole time. And
just had too many enemies the whole time as well.
Yes and no. The thing as well is, I don't think they're going to get rid of the NHS the way you might think. That it's the biggest gravy train. And we are a massive experiment. If you speak to people like Debbie Evans, they love the fact that everyone's funneled into the system. Everyone's data is being collected. You've got massive centralization. You have no choice. You can't do anything differently. You have to follow whatever they tell you, dictate to you. And all that data is being sold to Big Pharma and the insurance companies.
Oh, yeah.
All the services are being run now by the big insurance companies and Big Pharma. By the nice guidelines, they're making sure that you take their drug and there's no choice.
Yeah.
And if you, as a doctor, question, you'll get disciplined. It's the most convenient way of funneling our taxpayers' money into the private sector.
Yeah, which is what neoliberalism is, isn't it? Really?
It's basically private-public partnership.
Yeah, of course.
It's not true free market capitalism choice.
Really not. No.
And so that's what I'm trying to say to you. I believe the solution is that everyone has the power to pick whoever they want to see, and every doctor practices the way they want to practice. And that means decentralization, no insurance companies, no politicians dictating anything, and no centralized nice guideline or whatever telling you to do this, and if you don't, you're going to go to the GMC.
Yeah.
That's my argument.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is now, and that's what's happened. That is why there is no NHS, really. If you boil it down, the NHS does not exist in any terms. So when you say they won't get rid of the NHS, they don't have to. They've already turned it into what they want.
Exactly. It's a zombie NHS.
And who was behind that? So Simon Stevens.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the so-called benign character, wasn't he? That was a health advisor to Blair in the early days. He was probably responsible for getting rid of Dobson, who was too pro-NHS, and bringing in Milburn, who has done a huge amount, did a huge amount to, change the system to as it is now, and has got extremely rich since, of course, by joining the board of Lloyd's and pharmacies and all sorts of other, BlackRock, I think, even, all sorts of different organisations. And, the whole going off to United Health from there, 2004 to 2014, where he was, believe it or not, as you probably have heard, the head of global expansion. Now, doesn't that title say it all? Head of global expansion. So he comes back to the NHS in 2014.
We love revolving doors, by the way.
Absolute brilliant revolving door. Produces all sorts of crazy ideas and policies that were sort of fluff. 10-year plans, 5-year plans, etc. But of course, what he was really up to was the Health and Care Bill, which got royal assent, soon after he left, to produce these 42 integrated care systems, which the sinister side of that is, of course, they've got no duty anymore to provide secondary care. And they're cash limited. So when the money runs out, you can be told, can't have that operation, money's run out.
Yeah. So listen, I want to go back to the NHS business. It's my bugbear. I'm not going to let you off the hook yet. So the reason why the NHS was great in the 50s and 60s was, and this is about the loss of memory that you were talking about, because it was exactly not the NHS. It was still like it was before the war. You had individual cottage hospitals, community hospitals. Most of the management were senior consultants and doctors. The management class was less than 1-2% of the budget. And they were all independent, autonomous. They were working independently. And you had a culture of where the nurses were on site, the doctors were on site, there was camaraderie. You'd have cricket with one hospital against another hospital. Each hospital had its own identity and brand and culture.
Yeah.
You had individualism, you had decentralization. And the only thing that happened over the coming decades was more centralization, taking away that individuality of that hospital and its culture and its clinicians, increasing the management class, increasing the diktats from the politicians, stripping away doctors' autonomy, inflating the management budget. So it's now almost like the American budget, 34, 40%. I mean, I know you said 34%. It's almost touching 40% now of the budget. And this is what happens when you have a centralized system.
It's not compulsory for that to happen, but it's natural when you've got politicians as we have, because they can't resist keeping in control of things, can they? They've got to keep a grip of things, and have ego trips on changing everything. The days of where the hospitals had sort of administration. They didn't have managers, they had administration. So they were administered. Bunging managers think, oh, I better change something to make my name. And as soon as they started doing that, again.
You also had medical staffing, not human resources. I hate that word.
Yes.
But I'll give you an example, right? So one of the things you were saying was about, you had this experience of like one example of many, you said, of private doctors and how they were offering grommets to the private patient, but the same patient on the NHS. Have you never come across any corruption and bad ethical practice amongst NHS doctors?
Oh, yeah.
Because I can tell you a few stories, and I will, but I'm just asking you. I think, again, like the way that you were saying, it's just these private practice and the bribery system. Really? What do you think the problems are within the NHS?
I was probably trying to get a message across with my comments on private medicine, hitting people hard with it to make them think, and it's obviously worked. The truth is a little bit different from what I was portraying, because, of course, a lot of my friends did very good private practice, absolutely ethical, absolutely moral, the whole thing. And, you bung in humans into any system and you're going to find a bad penny. I mean, look at Harold Shipman. I'm not saying, that's a great example, but, any system has people to abuse it. But that doesn't mean the system should be abolished just because there are a few people that abuse it.
Right, okay. So let me give you an example, right? The NHS. I used to be an NHS flag waver for most of my life. Loved it. Till I understood the problems of centralisation and how easily it can be corrupted and how the system is just designed to fail. So I was clinical director of orthopedics.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I could change the system. I was this young, enthusiastic consultant. And that's when I really got burnt and I realised how evil the system is. How so many of my colleagues were abusing the system. And it's not just the doctors, it was the nurses as well. There's no incentive to work hard. I'm talking about the hospitals now, I'm not talking about GP. There's no incentive to work hard. Guess what? Because you get the same salary. Whether you work hard and do 3 operations, whether you do 6, you get the same amount of money. So you would have a lot of people who would literally drag their feet and do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And they didn't give a flying F about what happened to the patients. And it was really disappointing. Anesthetic colleagues, nursing staff, porters, who cares? There's no incentive to treat the patient. It's all about dragging their feet, having breakfast, long coffee breaks, and making excuses to cancel operations. That's what I saw. What I also saw was doctors claiming to do work when they weren't doing work. What I also saw was doctors who were not good clinicians go into management and attend boring, endless meetings where nothing was done except to discuss last week's agenda and plan the next week's agenda, and then reward themselves with clinical excellence awards of 50,000 and 100,000 while doing absolutely fuck all for their patients. I saw all of this in the NHS. And I could go on and on. I could talk about the managers and the clinicians who would give contracts to their Freemason buddies when it wasn't really necessary. Spending money on the budget just for the sake of it so that next year's budget was the exact same, if not bigger. Not about saving money, not about introducing change, and also stripping away autonomy so that if you wanted to do something for your patient, you were told, no, this is against the guideline and the protocol. Oh, Ahmed, this isn't your patient anymore. This is the hospital's patient. Doctors who would come up to me and say, Ahmed, don't you understand? You have to play the system. Drag your feet. You have to build up a waiting list so that you can have leverage over the managers. These were all clinicians and managers. And most people were burnt out or miserable and angry and just biding their time to retire. Or a very, very few would leave completely like me. And most people stayed within the system with one foot in and one foot out. And they were the worst because they would do private healthcare just like they treated their NHS patients.
Yeah.
You know? And they were not worried about
a lot of this,
and
unfortunately.
and in the NHS, you need to understand surgeons would experiment on their patients with latest new operations untested, learn how to do minimally invasive surgery on them with very high complication rates. And once they'd fine-tuned it on all these little grannies whose feet are already messed up, and who cares if someone decides to sue me, the government will take the tab and I've got a job for life. Then they would take those skills and take it to the private sector.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
These were NHS doctors.
What you say surprises me. I was told, I was taken aside by the head of the clinical commissioning group and said, you do realise, don't you, you're not your patient's advocate anymore. You know, you're not there to fight his cause. You're there to serve the clinical governing group and to make sure we stay in budget. That's your job. That's your job as a GP now. You're not a patient's advocate. You know, and that was, frankly, probably the final straw for me when I was told that. Told them where to go, basically. And I totally ignored it. But, you know, that attitude coming from up above, in inverted commas, you know, appalled me.
But people take it. So when the managers told me you have to spend no more than 10 minutes with your patient, I was like, hold on 1 second. NHS, by the way. Hold on 1 second. So I've got to welcome this patient, build a rapport, get their socks and shoes off, take a history, understand what their complaints are, diagnose them, interpret investigations, formulate a treatment plan, explain that to them, and obtain their consent in 10 minutes. I'm really sorry. That's not something I can do. But guess what? I would push back and fight, and I would get into trouble. Eventually, I just gave up and went, I'm off private. Most of my colleagues were like, yeah, well, who gives a shit? Sure. Hello, right, okay, so you've got arthritis, it's a hip replacement, do you want me to put you on the waiting list? Yeah, no, and the patient would be like, I've got like 20 questions, and it's like, sorry, and that's why if you ask any patient, they leave a consultation with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is, you know, I had to go at your GP colleagues, but I'll talk about the hospital doctors. They're no better. Instead of pushing back and marching on the streets and saying, no, we're being dictated by management and we're losing our autonomy, they just went, oh, well, who cares? Not my problem. Just doing the job, collecting the paycheck. And an example of that was COVID, when my colleagues were literally having barbecues, getting paid their full salary, cancelling waiting lists left, right and centre. And when I would say to them, what's happening out there? They're like, it's great. We're having barbecues. We're getting paid to do this. It's lovely. And I was like, aren't you upset about the waiting list and your patients? Oh, no. Like, don't be stupid. Like, they literally don't care. Literally don't care.
And do they care any more about society and, you know, what's happening in the world? Probably not. Do they look past the end of their noses when they listen to the news? Do they care a shit about what's happening in Gaza? You know, do they care about anything? They got a sort of willful blindness, basically, that things only a problem if it affects them. And that is a lot of the population. And a lot of it is actually not their fault. It's the way they've been sort of, the media treat them as much as anything. When you have a rolling news service that's dictated by the newspapers, which are dictated by the right-wing barons, etc. They're almost told what to think, and so they're not interested. They lose interest in the world in many ways, I think. And this charade of politics, it is a sham, isn't it? The politics.
Is it?
I mean, what have we got now? We've got two parties that are very similar. They're going to exchange. We got a party that was elected with a huge majority on 30-something% of the vote. What's the point? And particularly when they don't do what some people voted for them to do. So
it's mockery.
It's a mockery, and people switch off. People switch off from it, and it not only do they withdraw little interest in anything beyond the family and their friends, but I think that infects their attitude to work as well. They think, as you say, I don't give a shit. I'm going to buy the new Audi that I've just seen advertised on the telly, and to get that, I need to earn some money, and to earn the money, I've got to basically do what I'm told.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, does that bother me? Well, it's not going to affect me, and what else can I do anyway? Because I haven't got any influence over anything. And that's the attitude of a lot of people. They feel that they're impotent. They've got no influence, and so what's the point?
Absolutely. I'm going to talk about private sector because I want to educate you about that. So there are major problems with the private sector, Paul, right? And it's very similar to the NHS. So take, for example, a recent conversation I had with Ian McDermott. He's got me into shooting, so we're practical shooting. Yeah. And he left the NHS and I left the NHS so that we could have an hour-long consultation, so that we could treat patients the way we wanted to, so that if I didn't want to operate, I didn't have to. Believe it or not, in the NHS, they would say to you, why are you having a long consultation? Why have you not put this patient on the waiting list? And I'd be like, well, they've got this problem, but I'm going to try and exhaust other problems, other methods. And they'd be like, oh, well, they've already been to the MSK service. They don't need that. I was like, no, actually, they made the wrong diagnosis. And now I've got the correct diagnosis. I'd still like to do a non-operative treatment plan and do all these other things. And the managers would give me a hard time and go, no, your job is to simply just put them on the waiting list. They wanted to reduce me to a technician.
Yeah, of course.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? It's much more nuanced and complicated. Whereas most of my colleagues go, right, great, yeah. They don't ask. My colleagues would ask, what's your sleep like? Is this the correct diagnosis that some junior physiotherapist in the MSK service and outside in the community has just diagnosed you with this? Oftentimes, it was the wrong diagnosis. If you just sat down and listened to the patient, you'd realize actually their problem is something completely different. They don't need a surgery. They don't need a procedure. And the reason why they're not getting it is because they've got the wrong diagnosis. And oftentimes, the patient didn't want an operation. They just wanted an answer and to know what's wrong with them. Anyway, so my friend and I decided to go full-time private for the very reason that we were sick and tired of being dictated to by clinicians. So by managers. So for example, when I was in the NHS, my conversion rate to surgery was about 40 to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
As a private surgeon, my conversion rate was 5%.
Yeah.
I got to spend an hour with them. I got to talk to them about their sleep. I got to reduce their weight and reverse their diabetes and their hypertension and magically make their feet feel better as well. Mm. And I didn't treat people with insurance. In the last few years, I just got rid of that because the insurance companies were the exact same as the managers. It's managed healthcare. They're telling patients who to see, at which hospital, how many consultations, and when and if they can get a scan and have an operation. And even the insurance companies would be like, no, you don't need to do these scans. And just look, are you going to operate or not? They just wanted, they were dictating to me, the insurance companies, how to practice. So I was running a boutique where most of my patients were self-pay, not insured. And I'm treating them hour-long consultations with, non-operative measures. And as a private surgeon like that, I would argue I was more ethical, conscientious, and caring than an NHS doctor. And I'll explain why. Because people like Ian McDermott and myself are only as good as our last patients and our reputation. Yeah. When people go to the golf club and the community and the nursing home and say, oh, Ahmed Malik is amazing. Ian McDermott fixed my knee and it's amazing. That's your name. But if your name is, oh, he's awful, he's terrible, No one's going to come through the doors
sure.
anymore.
Yeah.
All my NHS colleagues had a ready stream of patients to operate on who had no choice. They were forced and funneled to see them. And they got to experiment on them, all these new techniques. And if things go wrong, the system will take up the slack. They will never lose their job. Doesn't matter if people complain. What's going to happen? You write in a letter, say sorry, tough luck. No indemnity to worry about, no insurance. Your customers are going to keep coming through the doors. And you know what? You're a happy lad. Do you see the perverse incentive here?
Absolutely. The managers were pushing people on the operating list, surely because every operation they get money for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's coding and they get remuneration.
Yeah, yeah. And, that's another major flaw in the system, isn't it?
Absolutely. So the NHS managers were like, you need to operate and this is how we get our revenue and the money. And and when I was sitting in the NHS meetings, my eyes were like bulging. I was like, what the hell? And they didn't like me doing certain operations because it took a long time and didn't make enough money and blah, 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 blah. So what I'm trying to say is when I was private, I was fully private. I was autonomous, not beholden to the insurance companies and practicing ethically. And you just need to look at the hundreds of reviews on my website to see I made a lot of happy patients. And where private healthcare gets a bad name is when you've got unethical doctors, oftentimes the same ones that are in the NHS,
doing the same,
following the orders from the insurance companies, not giving a shit about their patients, not giving a damn, because they do the same in the NHS. And now they do it privately. And guess what? They're going to operate on you because they get more money, because the system and the people who have been selected, all they care about is money.
Yeah. And until 1990, of course, that wasn't the case. I know 1990 now is a long time ago, but that was all introduced in the marketisation from 1990 through Ken Clark, wasn't it? And that's where the money started being the god, basically.
Yeah.
Before that, surgeons did their list. They didn't get extra money for doing, extra operations, which, again, I know that's one of your criticisms maybe. But, you can't have it both ways. You can't be incentivized to operate with money or not incentivized. Both have their faults. And I would say the first is lesser of the two evils. The first to, have your list, do it, and don't get any extra money if you have to do an extra case.
Quick break. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the healthcare system? Are you unsure of who to consult, what questions to ask, or how to interpret tests and your diagnosis? Are you walking out of a consultation room with more questions than answers? After all, most consultations are 5 to 7 minutes, rushed, in and then out. With 25 years as a doctor, experience as a doctor and a surgeon, working in both the public and the private healthcare systems, I've got this unparalleled expertise. I really understand the nuts and bolts of the system, as well as what it truly means to be healthy. I've had the privilege of collaborating and learning from hundreds of leading health experts over the last 2 years. And through my own personal experience of turning around my own health, I've got a good idea of what it means to be healthy and what a real healthy lifestyle looks like. I'm deeply committed to medical ethics. I value informed consent, and I believe in protecting bodily autonomy. In today's world where trust in the healthcare system can feel elusive, you can count on me to always prioritize your best interests. So whether it's guidance or education or information you're looking for that's unbiased, no conflicts of interest, no financial gain to be got from me, from jabbing you or operating on you, if you just want a sounding board or a second opinion, then consider booking an online consultation with me. I'm not acting as a doctor to treat you or diagnose you, but I'm here as a health advocate and an educator to empower you with the knowledge to ask the right questions, to make the right decisions, and to show you the path to true health. So book an online consultation with me. Visit my website, docmalik.com/consultations. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, but the problem is you've got, I can tell you so many surgeons who do the bare minimum, who sit in the coffee room and don't give a damn.
Human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah, and do very little.
Yeah.
And if you get paid to just turn up and do the bare minimum, most people do bare minimum. Some people have pride in what they do and have a work ethic, but there's a lot of people who are not. And you know about those, there's names for them. They're just not good people. And that's the problem. And the system, the NHS, was very bad at getting rid of these people and rewarding those who worked hard and, were innovative. It kind of punishes you. And actually, the more you work hard, the system just dumps on you. Oh, well, can you do more then? Can you do more then? And when you retire, there's no thanks. There's no thank you. There's no goodbye. We appreciate your work. You just disappear into the sunset.
When I retired, I got a one-line letter saying, "Please return your prescription pad." That was it. A one-line letter. I didn't wear this T-shirt on purpose, but what fools are they that most mortals be? I mean,
what fools these mortals
a bit
be?
Of Shakespeare, and that sums it up as far as I'm concerned. But there are fools, but there are also some devious, evil people that are in control instead. But and the rest of us are fools, I think.
We are fools. Yeah, I'll take that. The politicians are the really evil ones. They're taking the money from Bill Gates, from BlackRock, from Larry Fink. There's the revolving doors.
Yeah.
You can just see people like, what's his name? That Lib Dem guy. Oh, he was in coalition. Nick Clegg.
Yeah, went off to Facebook. Yeah.
You got all these people who don't give a damn about the country, who sell the soul literally to the devil. And everything we're seeing in the NHS is all about that crony capitalism, that not independent, true private practice where you have choice, where you have the ability to pick who you want to see, when and where. You're a controlled group of people. You can only go to one person and get the care that they offer you. And all of the strings are being pulled by Big Pharma, the banks, and the evil people. It's a very evil system where the government is in cahoots with these big, massive globalist corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of protecting the public and serving the public's interest, they are in bed with them, literally, and abusing us.
Yeah, add the food industry to that as well. Big Pharma, food industry, you name it. Basically, they're not there for our good, are they?
No. So what's the answer?
What's the answer? I really don't know. I mean, I've heard podcasts of yours, and you ask that question to people, and you ask, are you optimistic? And most people say, yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm not. I'm not particularly optimistic. I've written another book, actually, and I won't give away the ending, but it doesn't end well for the human race, I can tell you.
Oh, God.
And
why are you not optimistic?
Because we're up against so much, aren't we? Unless the pitchforks come out and heads end up on spikes, why do they introduce all the anti-demonstration legislation and things? Because they're scared of that. Unless that happens, they're going to control everything. I was listening to Yanis Varoufakis on the way here. He said capitalism's dead. It's now there's now a technical dictatorship that's taking over the world, a digital dictatorship taking over the world. And I don't know, didn't follow the end of it to find out why he still felt that capitalism was dead, but he was certainly made a good case for this digital, dictatorship that we're all faced with. And when you're up against that, I mean, I am a bit gloomy. Not for me, because I won't be here, but for my kids and my grandkids, I feel sorry for them.
Are any of your kids in medicine?
No. Good Lord, no. There's nobody in my family from medicine. I didn't come from a medical family. I learned my medicine from, Doctor in the House books and, silly things, Carry On Doctor and things on the TV, and when I went to a GP, sat in a shed, waiting to be seen, in a line, going in there, and I mentioned this the other day because I still think it's funny. The GP was sitting there eating his tin of sardines out of a tin, munching away while he was chatting. He missed my mother's bowel cancer diagnosis, but that's the only doctor I knew. And there's no way I would have encouraged my kids into medicine. But I didn't have to discourage them because they weren't interested. They saw what I was doing in the 80s when I was trying to bring them up, not there, on call, working too much, too hard, which is one of the things I regret now, listening to my elders too much, and which I shouldn't have done.
Yeah. Do you not think med school was trauma-based mind control?
My medical school training was appalling. Absolutely appalling. It was learning by embarrassment rather, by people that had no right to be teachers. They were useless at it.
Ritual humiliation.
Ritual humiliation. They enjoyed it. They were sadists.
Yes,
them.
same.
And I learned nothing until I became a houseman and then started practicing and doing things. And but what surprised me was I sort of went off to medical school to join all these public school kids that were there already. They sort of took it in their stride. For them it didn't surprise them.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that decided very early on that, right, I'll become an ophthalmic surgeon because I can make a load of money. And they were, because my dad did that, So no, there's nobody in my family medical, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to be medical either.
Yeah, same. I remember being pulled up so many times as a medical student, answer this, do you know this? And it was just unreasonable. It was mocking. It was humiliating. It was scary. And even as a junior doctor, to present at the morning meeting, the questions, the way they would ask you. But there were also good teachers and doctors as well. It wasn't all negative, but it was tough, and it was a lot of humiliation and teaching by embarrassment.
Absolutely.
And I think med school is about that pressure, the stupid exams every 4 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever, and the long nights. I think it's trauma. It's to break you down as like a young army recruit, erase your past, and then imprint on you the new set of rules. And it's about being a good little rule follower.
And desensitization in many ways. I mean, I think as a houseman, and through medical school, they did a good job in desensitizing me to compassion and the things that I should have been, interested and, devoted to, really. Seeing the deaths that occurred as a houseman, you sort of just, oh, well, she's dead. Move on. No discussion or whatever. It affected me. It really changed me for the worst. I think I've begun to recover since I retired, actually.
You know what? 100%. I remember the first time I saw someone die, Costello. I had to catheterize him. Halfway through the catheterization, he died of a heart attack. It's quite traumatic. I was a medical student. And there was none of this, oh, are you okay afterwards? I was just laughing at the fact that I had my hands around his penis while he suddenly had a heart attack. I mean, that kind of traumatizes you.
Yeah.
And they all just had a good laugh at it. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? What just happened?
Yeah.
And it was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm on my shift. And it was just like, oh my God, this guy's just dead. I find it quite traumatic. People might be having a giggle listening to this. I mean, it is a bit funny, actually. Did I cause this guy's heart attack? But it was just like, it was just so much like that. It was hard. But over the years, I've been struck by how little my colleagues actually care.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Yeah. And I've talked about this. You might have read some of my Substacks or podcasts where I'm like, first do no harm to my patient is such a load of bollocks. It's first do no harm to my reputation, my career, my medical license and registration, my mortgage, my holidays, my private schooling for my kids, my mistress, whatever. And then maybe first do no harm, but as long as I'm following my protocols and guidelines.
It struck me after about 10 years in practice, it struck me when we took on a partner And I listened to a conversation he was having with a patient, and he was saying, "Oh, you poor thing." And I thought, what the fuck's he talking about? You know, he's been empathetic, he's been sympathetic. And I thought, hang on, that should have been me. You know, what happened? What happened to me? You know, he was soon drummed out of him as well after no time at all. But, you know, it's just sad that that's the way we were treated, and probably still are.
Yeah. So I think the answer is a new type of doctor. And that's why I'm like, not sad about physician associates and doctors not going anywhere. You know, like you said, there's unemployed doctors. And where are the GPs going, no, we don't want the physician associate. We're gonna employ a junior general practitioner. But they're taking the money. These physician associates are subsidized. They're indemnified. And for now, but they're going to be replaced. AI will make the decisions, and these physician associates will dispense the pill and inject the patient, will not think. And right now, with doctors, you still have this pesky little 0.01% of doctors like me and Sam White and you who think independently and are a bit annoying. With the new physician associates, that's going to go down to 0%.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Even though they're working outside their comfort zone and are under quite a considerable threat to their mental health as well, I should think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Aldous Huxley said, medicine is making such tremendous progress that soon none of us will be well. Which I thought was a brilliant quote. You know, it sums up medicine, really. You know, why did the Americans change the definition of depression to widen the net, taking out a huge more people so the Big Pharma could sell more drugs to them, of course. You know, these are the sort of faults that are around. And, you know, so people, if Huxley said that about 60 years ago, you know, so it's, you know, nothing's changed really, particularly there.
No. You know, when someone came to you with high blood pressure, did you ever try and understand why they had high blood pressure, or would you just give them blood pressure medication?
Yeah.
Be honest with me.
Yep. You see, I was very fortunate. Being in the same practice for 30 years, you got to know your patients very well. And by the time I'd left, I'd dealt with perhaps 4 generations of the same family. So what made my job really easy at the end was that I knew everybody that walked in the door. And I knew when they walked through the door why they were coming. There were those that were just scared and wanted some reassurance, and all I had to do was reassure them and they went away. There were those that, you know, thumped the table and wanted a referral. And I knew that before they walked in again. So the patient that walked in, who I knew from donkey's years before, an anxious type or whatever, I knew their lifestyle. I knew all about them. So when their blood pressure, the nurse took their blood pressure and sent them to me, said, this person's blood pressure's up a bit, you know, do something about it. Then I was in a great position to talk to them about, you know, yeah, but this job you've got, it's awful, isn't it? You know, and that divorce you've just been through, you know, I knew all about that. So, of course, we could tackle that, you know. A lot of them, though, a lot of patients, though, of course, are taken in by the fact that, yeah, but I know I'm stressed. Nothing I can do about my stress. So just give me some pills so I can not have another stress. In other words, worrying about my blood pressure. So, you know, in some ways, everybody being different, that happened as well. So you ended up dishing out blood pressure pills, of course, because Big Pharma tells you to. And the days when I first qualified, I was seeing drug reps because that's what happened in the practice. But you soon realise that, you know, they're pulling the wool over your eyes, conning you, lying to you, feeding you false research.
You see that. So that's another thing I forgot to tell you when you were having a little go at private practice. I was like, do you know the number of GPs in the 90s that I knew that were just taking the money from the drug reps?
Yeah.
The free meals, the free holidays, the free conferences in Switzerland or France, skiing trips. Yeah. So what was it? I got a bit, can you tell I was a bit miffed with you when I heard you and Richie Allen just having a go at private doctors? I was like,
your fucking colleagues were taking the money.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like unethical bastards and being bribed. It's not as simple as private, public.
No.
It's the whole system is fucked up.
I'm glad I provoked a good reaction.
But the GPs took the money.
Oh, yeah.
But then guess what? The Big Pharma were so clever. They were like, well, instead of sending all these individual reps, giving them all the freebies and the meals and the holidays and the conferences, fuck it, we'll just create this nice guideline system.
Yeah.
Bribe a few people at the top. And now we're going to dictate to tens of thousands of doctors how to practice. And we don't have to send the reps anymore. No. Did you notice how over the years the reps just disappeared?
Because they stopped giving things even like pens.
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything like that.
But you didn't have to.
No. Now, well, they had that taken away, so they changed tactics. And now they're probably much more effective than, knocking on my door as a GP and saying, oh, this drug's better than that one. And their use of relative risk and absolute risk, to fiddle the figures. I mean...
So you're a GP in the late 80s, yeah?
Early
90s?
As a GP from 83 and worked till 2013.
All right. Okay. So in the 1980s, take an average patient. Your average patient, how many medications were they on?
The average patient? Difficult to remember, but one or two.
And at the end, 2013, how many drugs were they on?
80 or 90? No. The average elderly, at least 4, at least perhaps 6. And what was good about, the only good thing, the only satisfaction I had was, you used to send somebody into hospital on no drugs. They used to come out on 10 or whatever. And so immediately you took them off, most of them. Because, it was a sort of standard, they've got to have a statin, they've got to have a bisphosphonate, they've got to have, this or that and the other. They've got to have their blood pressure.
Proton pump inhibitor.
Absolutely, yeah. On top of their non-steroidal, of course, which is eating their gut away, so they've got to have the PPI, yeah.
So you must be very unusual that you actually took people off these drugs, because most people, when they get started on these drugs, they stay on them forever.
Well, I did it again because, fortunately, my patients that I knew all those years trusted me, and I used to go through them and said, this is this drug. Why do you want it? Do you know the numbers needed to treat to stop one stroke? 77 people needed to be treated. So 77 more of you, mate, and one of you might benefit.
That's according to their corrupt studies as well.
Yes, because they will cut. Yeah.
So we don't even know if that's accurate.
No,
what I'm trying to say.
That's the statistic they won't tell you. What they will tell you is, we can reduce strokes by 48%, because figures out the head. If you go from 28 in 1,000 to 15 or 13 in 1,000, that's reduced it by 48%. So that's the relative risk that they want to feed you. The absolute risk is that's gone down 13, which is 1.3%. Yeah. So actually, that's where the 1 in 77 comes from.
Yeah.
And this appears, of course, on the BBC and on the front page of Daily Mail. Strokes halved. Take this statin, and your risk of a stroke will be halved. Now the BBC quite regularly produces headlines of new wonder drug for Alzheimer's, new this, new that, without much great evidence.
But I'm saying there's layers of the corruption and deceit and lies. So yes, that's 1.13 reduction, whatever. I'm saying even that data, though, is corrupted. Even that raw data, they inflate, exaggerate, they take away, like, for example, with the COVID vaccines, they took out the patients that died, all this, because they fudged the numbers, and then they created this 95% safe and effective, and using, relative risk, not absolute risk. But there's so many layers of the bullshit, the lying, the corruption. The studies are engineered in a way that's going to validate their end result, what they want. They use statistical jugglery again to blind you of the truth. It's just bullshit.
Why do they spend 20 times more on marketing than they do on research?
Absolutely.
And most drugs are Me Too drugs, aren't they? They're not new drugs anymore. They're just copies of old other ones that they want to put people on for life because that's where, they make a load of money.
Do you think GPs are even necessary? So some places in the world, you just go directly to a specialist. If you've got an ear problem, you go see an ear doctor. If you've got, a chest problem, go see... I'm just saying, like, is there even a role now for doctors, general practitioners, who are just basically gatekeepers, who just dish out Lipitor, Prozac, statins, who don't think, who look on a computer screen, barely look at their patient? Is there a role for that kind of doctor anymore?
Yeah, they... Not as a gatekeeper, but as a sieve, really, because, if somebody comes into me with a headache, right, and they know me well and trust me, and I do a proper examination, diagnose their migraine or whatever, they walk out happy. If I don't know them, they walk in, say, I need a head scan, refer me to a specialist. And, that is the danger of spending a lot more money. If everybody that gets a headache goes and sees a neurologist first, they're all going to get scanned, of course, and it's going to cost a lot more money. I could sieve out the people that still walk out very happy, and assuming I've got the diagnosis right, then, it's given them a good service, hasn't cost any money, and that's the role of the GP, not to dish out pills, as you say.
Yeah, not all specialists would send for a scan. Experienced clinicians would be able to reassure and say, actually, don't worry, there's nothing going on here. Like I said.
You get a lot more done than would have got done otherwise, yeah.
So exactly. So this is the corruption in the private sector. So again, independent myself, I won't just scan everybody. But guess what? There were colleagues of mine who did. Now let me explain, Paul. I'm filling in the picture for you so you understand how it works. So there would be private doctors working in the NHS as well, who would set up a private hospital or clinic. And because they know the insurance companies are driving down their, fees. So, for example, a doctor in 2000 would have got £250 from an insurance company. Now they get £90.
Right.
Now inflation's gone the other way. Yeah. Costs have gone up. But as a private doctor, you're taking this insurance of £90, £80, from Bupa, and most of your patients are going to be from Bupa or AXA, 70%, and they're paying you literally £90 to £100 for a patient, and your costs are going through the roof, room rentals, secretary, billing, dictation, everything. And 25 years ago, your old boss was making £250 for that patient, and now you're making 90 25 years later. There's a reason why your old boss had a Bentley or a Rolls Royce, had a house in France, went swimming and skiing out there all year, in the winter, had a private plane sometimes, and why you are living in a one-bedroom flat in London and barely able to make ends meet, right? And so instead of spending 1 hour with a patient, you're now going to shove in 6 patients in an hour to try and recoup the costs.
Of course.
But what other private doctors have started doing is they've realized that the money is in imaging. So the insurance companies hadn't clamped down on the imaging yet. So what we'll do is we'll buy an MRI or an ultrasound scan. Yeah. And every single fucking patient that comes through the door is going to get a scan, and they'll make the money from the scan. Now, I was invited to many of these little clinics, and I said, I'm not comfortable with that. That's unethical. And if I was to see the patient, I would have to explain to them duty of candor and integrity and probity. By the way, I'm going to send you for a scan, and you should be aware that the arrangement I have with this clinic is I get a percentage profit from every scan. But that's not influencing my decision. I'm doing the scan because I think you need it. That's why I would, if I was in that arrangement. Do you think my colleagues say that? Do you think they could?
Absolutely.
And how many patients do you think would come to my clinic for a second opinion and go, oh, it's amazing. As soon as I came in, I was just sent for an X-ray, an ultrasound, and an MRI. Everyone just gets straight away all the imaging, like everything. And the reason why is because that's where the money is.
And patients are impressed, aren't they?
The patient, and this is,
Go to the private hospital for a 5-year or yearly annual check where they have all sorts of serum rhubarbs done that mean absolutely nothing. That if it was abnormal, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
But they still do it, and they produce a nice long list of blood tests, and they think, oh, it's fantastic. I'm healthy. I'm going to live forever.
100%. So recap, you mentioned at one point the patient problems or the patients were also like wanting a pill. So there's problems every level. Patients are not taking responsibility for their own health. They're abdicating it to people like you and I, who sometimes are not really interested in their health. They want a quick fix in the form of a tablet, an injection, even surgery. One of my last complaints, I rarely had a complaint. One of my last complaints was, Mr. Malik refuses to operate on me. Like, honestly, they wrote to the private hospital executive director to complain that I was refusing to operate on them. Yeah, I kid you not, right? So patients need to take responsibility and stop going for the easy option, the lazy option, right? Convenience. Doctors need to be more principled and remember their oaths and practice independently and outside of the box of Big Pharma and protocols and guidelines, and grow a backbone and grow a pair of ovaries and testes and work ethically and with integrity, and not just what's convenient for their pension and their career and their license and their mortgage, and try to operate just for the sake of it and making money. And hospitals need to run independently now for their local communities, rather than being dictated to by Big Pharma, management, politicians. Politicians should have nothing to do with hospitals anymore.
No.
Nothing. Nothing. We should get rid of 95% of the so-called management class. Medical schools should no longer be centres of indoctrination and abuse. They should learn actual real medicine, not Rockefeller medicine.
Yeah, you're summing it up brilliantly.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And we should tell insurance companies to fuck off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because insurance companies, whether it's a car insurance or home insurance, they don't want to pay. They've got no... Look, in the past, insurance companies, you would be like, right, in case I get sick, I want to have the money that's in a pot that I can spend on whatever, a doctor, a scan, or a test. And the insurance company will be like, oh, give us the money and we'll invest it, and you get a pot and we'll make money from it, and when you need it, we'll give it to you. They were there just to give you the money when you needed it, because you were paying into it regularly.
Yeah.
But what happened over the years is the insurance companies started to dictate and stand between the doctor-patient relationship.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the doctor, I'm the clinician, you're the patient, you choose who you see. I will treat you according to what I think is best for you. That's the arrangement. When you want the bill paid, you tell the insurance company and they give you the money or pay me. That's it. That was their job.
Yeah.
What's happened is they stood right in the middle of us. They faced you, the patient, and said, no, that's not a problem we're treating. You're going to have to go to the NHS or stump up for yourself. Oh, yes, we will treat that, but you're going to go to this clinic that we've decided you're going to see, and this inexperienced doctor that we're paying peanuts to see, and you can't have that scan and you can't have that test, and these are the options that you've only got available to you. Then the insurance company turns around to me, the doctor, and goes, right, you can have our patients, not yours, our patients, but only if you do what we tell you to. You're going to accept our fees. You're going to run your practice like this. You're going to make sure you only order the test when we tell you to. And you're going to operate when we tell you to. And you're not going to be a clinician. You're just going to be a technician. Now, most patients have gone, oh, okay, insurance company. Most doctors have gone, oh, okay. We need to get that fucking middleman out.
Yeah. And patients learn this the hard way, don't they? This is the trouble. I mean, the education is needed here for patients as well, that they don't need the operations, and they shouldn't listen to the media that they've got a cure for everything. And
stop taking out health insurance.
Exactly.
No, seriously.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because that's what's happening to the middle classes, and they think it's the answer. They think, oh, well, I'm fine because I've got health insurance, without even thinking for a moment that your health insurance is no different than your car insurance, your house insurance, your anything insurance that they're going to try and get out of.
Absolutely.
And it costs a bloody fortune as well.
Yes.
Over a certain age, that you'd be far better putting the money in the bank than paying an insurance company. And why are they there? Get money out of you. I mean, and people might want to have more influence over their local health service if they thought, or if they didn't opt out or think they were opting out with private health insurance. It's not doing them any good, even though they believe it is. But if they knew the truth, they might actually do something a bit more effective.
100%. That's the thing. People need to vote with what matters, and that's the wallet and the money.
Yeah.
Starve the system of the money. So, look, if I sound very defensive, it wasn't just me. Look, Barbara Wilkinson,
full-time private medical herbalist. One of the most beautiful souls ever. She's private sector, right?
Yeah.
But she's amazing. Nick, the holistic vet, he's private. I could go on and on. Holistic dentist, Zach Cox. I could, there's so many people in osteopaths, physios, chiropractors, massage
there's not
therapists.
much left anymore that isn't private, is there? Let's face it.
Homeopaths,
Yeah.
acupuncturists.
Everybody's private. Really.
Poppy Bowler, my acupuncture. She's private. Look, these are good human beings working out of the system, and the relationships between me and the patient, or them and the patient. They're not taking the money from the insurance companies, and they're doing what's best for their patient. And they are in the private sector, but they're not taking bribes. They're not unethical. They're good people.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. Of course it should be.
And what we need is that people to understand the insurance companies are pure evil. And actually, if you're running a business, don't take health insurance out. Because your feelings. If you're a private individual and you think, oh, you know what, I'm going to take health insurance out. No, actually, don't. Put the money in a savings account.
Exactly.
And if and when you need it, it's there for you. And then you can pay for the doctor you want to see and get the test that you need to get. Don't get out of that insurance model.
Quite agree. And that's why I have the basic, necessary insurance in everything. Don't have it with knobs on. It's I have the cheapest I can get away with, car insurance or whatever, because I know they're crooks and they're going to not probably pay up, even if I do have a more expensive one. My car out there, basic insurance. If I smash it up, I had it.
Yeah.
But I'd rather smash it up and buy a new one than give the money to an insurance company. And that's the same with all these medical insurance companies as well.
Hi, me again. You're listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or on his Substack, or simply buy him a coffee with one of the donation links which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Complete scam.
What then? Yeah.
Complete scam. Because people need to understand they're not just about giving out the money and the premium. They are dictating clinical practice.
Yeah. As they have done in America for decades. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so when you warn people about the American health model, I'm with you, brother. It's scary.
Delay, and then you die. Their motto, basically. Which sums it up as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I have a problem also with the whole medical field, because the thing is, like, how many things do doctors actually cure these days? Because a cure is one where you're not having to take a pill for more than a week. But most doctors that I now know, all they do is dispense a pill for every ill, or inject, or offer surgery. How many people say, why did you get that? Let's look at your circadian rhythm, or your non-native EMS, or the blue light exposure, or your deficiencies, or the toxins in your life, or the stress that you're going through, or the food that you're eating, or the water that you've got. Like,
absolutely.
How many doctors, how many do that?
Very few. And the statistics, don't you, that what was the life expectancy in 1850? Something like 40. Average, that is, obviously. What is it now? Average 80. How many years of medicine contributed to that extra 40? About 4. The rest is better housing, better hygiene, better sanitations and things like that, and being a bit better off.
Yeah.
So we overestimate greatly the power of medicine. We haven't got a cure for every ill, and we haven't got any cures for most things, actually.
No, we don't.
So it is very heavily overestimated our power, but that was produced by the myth of the God Doctor as well, wasn't it, in the older generations?
But it's all myth, because the thing is that statistic is not really going back enough in time. When people worked the land and were out in the sun, they lived a long life. They were happy. They didn't even work that long in hours. The idea is that they were working for, hours and hours like wage slaves today is not true. They had time for recreation. How do you think they built all these lovely cathedrals and buildings and stuff? They were healthy, but
during the industrialization, when they all got corralled into the cities with the sewage and the...
That's when they were in trouble.
That's when it was in trouble.
Yeah.
And now we go, oh, look, we're living longer. Yeah, what, like the last 15 years dribbling and doubling incontinent in a nursing home? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You know,
the old story, isn't it? Oh, I can extend your life by 2 years. Okay, well, can I have those 2 years when I'm 20, please? You know, not when I'm 90. Thanks. You know, because what's the point?
Absolutely. Anyway, so going back, I think the answer is removing the middlemen, whether it's the insurance companies, the management, the politicians, and restoring the doctor-patient relationship.
Absolutely.
And also having choice. Patients should be able to choose who they see, GP, doctor, clinician. And the system that we've got, whether it's private currently with the insurance model, which I don't like, or the NHS, means that you have no choice. You have to see who you are told to see, who will tell you what they have been told to tell you by the management, insurance companies, Big Pharma. So right now, the Big Pharma model has created a mirror where the public health sector and the private health sector essentially are the same. The same medicine is being practiced. One funnels money from the taxpayer through the public sector into Big Pharma and the corporations and the insurance companies. And the other one simply takes it from the private individual through the insurance companies to the Big Pharma and the corporations. But both of them are getting treated the exact same.
Yeah.
And I want to destroy that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I agree with you with the choice. But if you have a very good GP who's got time with you, you don't want the choice anymore because you're going to stick with the same one. And how
many people can say they've got one of those?
No, exactly. I gave a speech about 20 years ago to the BMA saying, let's reduce our list sizes to 1,000 and look after those 1,000 properly. You know, oh no, it's full. Oh no, it's far better to have 2,000 or 3,000. Just get them in and out through the door. You know, I was ridiculed basically. But if they've gone that way, and you have good, well-trained GPs with the right attitude, looking after 1,000 patients properly, they wouldn't want a choice. They wouldn't want to say, "Oh, I'm going down the road now. Thank you very much," because they'd stick with the same one.
Well, the reason why they laughed at you back again is because of money. So what they say is build up the list size. Let's hope that 80-90% of them will never come, and we'll deal with the chronic ones. And we'll get the bigger the list, the better. We just make the money at those that never attend, and those people who keep coming again and again, well, we'll fill them with drugs and fill up our quaff targets and whatever. Back to money.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely back to money.
NHS GPs.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. The system is so fucking broken.
And their argument was, in those days, to go along with the government, is, we better do what the government says, because if we don't, they'll get somebody else to do it. You know, that was their argument all the way through. So we've got to capitulate. We've got to do what they say. And,
yes.
And it's not that bad after all, because we get the money anyway.
Bingo. See, that's honesty.
Yeah.
The truth is,
principle's gone.
Doctors are cowards, have no principles, no integrity, and simply take the money.
Yeah.
Like the COVID shots and all the... Where were they? Yeah. Speaking against the mandates.
Yeah.
Did you notice that? Were you not disgusted by them?
Yes, absolutely. There was nobody, but it seems that most doctors learnt about COVID through the media. They weren't educated in any other way. They listened to the media, thought, oh, well, that's, and they had their heads down on the cold face, which is no excuse. But that's what they did. But the media says this, let's go along with it.
Do you not think doctors...
critical thinking.
Yeah, don't you think doctors are highly educated and indoctrinated and also highly ignorant of what it means to be...
They're not as highly educated as you think, are they, when you talk about our medical school training? But they're highly ignorant, being railroaded down a certain track.
So the reason why I keep going on about this, and some people might be like, wow, we're really doctor bashing, is that the problem is the Rockefeller system created doctors that were on a pedestal and figures of authority.
Yes.
So in the 1800s, doctors weren't like that.
No.
You were just another person that helped, whether osteopath, chiropractor, doctor, physician, whatever, you were just, valued and respected, but you weren't this authority
figure on a pedestal. And the system designed it so that we were put on this pedestal, so that patients would be like, oh, okay, the doctor said this differential, oh, whatever you say, I'll do. And part of the solution is we need to knock doctors off the pedestal, because they certainly don't deserve to be there.
No.
And for people to realize that they are the ones in charge of their health and their destiny, and they shouldn't abdicate their health to people who really don't deserve it.
Absolutely. One of my greatest books I read on this, A.J. Cronin's The Citadel, published in 1937, well before the NHS, and it gives the case for ethical medicine. It's a novel. I don't know whether you've heard of it or read it.
No.
Get it. The Citadel by A.J. Cronin. He was a doctor, and he basically made the case for, in a novel form, of ethical medicine, etc. A bit like my book, Not that I'm any A.J. Cronin, I'm certainly not. But, I highly recommend it. It influenced me greatly.
Amazing. Right, listen, before we ask you the last question of the day, where can people find you?
Through my publisher, mainly, www.strandpublishing.uk.
You don't have any social media or website or anything?
Yeah, I do. I'm on Facebook and those sort of things, but I don't use them a great deal. I haven't got a website or anything like that. Strand, my publisher, my brilliant editor, Janie, who you probably know, she subscribes to you.
She's the one that recommended I get you on.
She must have been. Yeah.
She did.
Oh, yes, right. It's through them, and I want people to get the book because it is non-profit making, but, just to read it, to learn about the health service, learn about what's right and wrong in it. But I blow my own trumpet. I think it's a good laugh and a good read anyway, because it had me laughing as I was writing it. So I enjoyed that. So this is it anyway. The deceit
Put it up.
syndrome.
Deceit syndrome. Turn it
that?
towards the camera so everybody can see.
that?
Yeah.
So you can get copies best through Strand. That's what I prefer.
Well, you sent me a copy. I've got the book. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. I've got so many books, my friend. Honestly.
Put it on your shelf so that everybody sees it behind.
I will.
Every day.
I promise I will.
Yeah.
I promise I will. I've just got so many goddamn books to read. And I honestly try and read most of them. I just inundated. I've been quite unwell, actually. I had a slip disc in my neck. Then I had labyrinthitis. And I'm better from that. But now I've got hay fever.
One of my heroes in here gets a cauda equina syndrome, which I've heard.
I had twice.
Yeah.
I had twice. Awful.
Yeah. I have neck troubles as well. It's funny, isn't it? Sitting at a desk all those years, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't help.
And so the NHS saved me, but also failed me.
Yeah.
When it came to
I have heard your story. Yeah. It sounds horrible. Yeah.
Awful.
I'm glad to see you looking well now.
Thanks. So, listen, I totally agree with you. I think the NHS, like let's just park my philosophy about the NHS and whether it's worth it or not. But if you imagine this world where it was a perfect system, it's not there anymore. It's been raped. It's been hollowed out. It's a zombie. It's like the invasion of the body snatchers. It's pretending to be something when it's not. It's now a wholly corporate, big pharma, globalist machinery and technocratic, harvesting your data. It's actually kind of sinister. And that's not to say that the people working in it are bad. A lot of them are well-intentioned and good, but also ignorant of what's going on. Yeah. Stressed out. They are so stressed out that they take out their stress on their patients and their frustration on their patients. Yeah. Or they get burnt out and sick, which is why sickness is so high amongst medical staff. So they're victims, to be honest, they're victims. And the system is just really, really not good. It's evil. If in the acute situation, yes, they do a lot of good work, scoop you up from the road if you've been in a car accident or whatever. But when it comes to like any long-term kind of like follow-up and chronic disease management, it's failing on an epic scale. Yeah. And it's all about funneling money to the Freemasons, to the corporations, to Big Pharma. And the politicians profit from it. They all go on their directorships. They get paid millions of pounds in bonuses. Yeah. The revolving doors is very much alive. Or they get paid, like in America. The lobbyists will pay them and get funded by them.
it's a really evil system that profits from people's misery and illness. And really the solution is for human beings to take ownership of their own lives and bodies and to say no. So I don't know if you've noticed there was some work being done in my house, and one of the guys was like, oh, I'm off to get my Ozempic injection yesterday. And I sat down with him for about half an hour. And I said, look, I'm not telling you what to do, but these are the risks and complications.
Yeah.
And later on that day, he came back up to me and went, I'm not going for the injection.
Good.
And then what I said was, I'm going to give you a free consultation. You're going to come here, just sit down for 1 day, 1 hour, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can lose your weight and how you can reverse your high blood pressure. And my car, my 2012 car is in the garage right now. I love the guy at the garage, but he's really put on weight. I said, look, do you really want to be like this, or do you want to lose weight? You've got kids like my age. He went, yeah. And so today he's coming at 7 o'clock, and I'm going to just sit down with him, and I'm just giving back the love. I want to help people without them just relying on drugs and tablets and pills. It's bullshit.
It is bullshit, and it's a good example because only yesterday this study came out. The 2 drugs for weight loss, one is so much better than the other. Guess where that came from? The one that was so much better than the other was made by Eli Lilly. Who funded the study that the BBC gave headlines to? Eli Lilly. You know, it's pathetic, really, that they don't dig deeper and just jettison those sort of stupid stories.
That's a really good point. You know, I did this chat with Kim Witchak, and we did the spider web of big pharma influence. And the reality is, like you just said, even media has failed us. Like, they take money from Bill and Melinda Gates and Big Pharma. I mean, I think in America, the biggest advertising TV is cable is from Big Pharma. Pfizer's funded by Pfizer. And so, like, they're not giving true objective facts and information. They're just basically parroting and giving ads for Big Pharma. And then...
And they fund both sides, of course.
Yeah.
You know, they give money to Democrats and the Republicans because they can't lose that way.
Yeah. But even like the institutions like the Royal College of Surgeons, the Royal College of General Practitioners, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the management, the top doctor management, political animals, they're all corrupt as well.
Yeah. And the journals, BMJ or whatever, taking the adverts that they can't upset their advertisers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The whole system is messed up.
Yeah.
There used to be a time I would go into a hospital and there'd be a library with all the medical journals, and I didn't have to pay. I would have access to everything. Now everything's behind a paywall. There is no hospital library.
Really?
You have to pay for every medical journal. And it's all about money, and it's all brainwashing, indoctrination. I think there's this editor of a big journal said 80% of what we've published is just complete.
Yeah.
You couldn't reproduce it. It's just garbage.
Yeah, absolutely right.
There's so much wrong with the system, Paul.
Yeah.
So much.
Absolutely. And that's where my pessimism comes from, I'm afraid.
Well, I think sometimes, you know, what is it they say? The night is darkest just before the dawn.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Sometimes it has to get really bad before people wake up, and then we get back to a golden era, and then we become complacent, and then we get corrupt.
Yeah.
Gets really bad.
The pendulum.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will swing.
It will swing.
We'll see.
Right, listen. Last question of the day, my friend. And I just want to say thank you for coming. And I'm sorry it was a bit more...
Oh, no, it's fun. You know, you've got to be challenged.
Do you think you've changed your mindset a little bit about the private sector?
I didn't really have a great difference from you, to be frank.
Yeah.
You know what it's like when you give an interview, you know, you just spout, as I have done today. And on the one the other day, you know, I didn't mean to say it as forthright as I did, but it just came across, and what the hell, you know, provokes a good argument.
Yeah.
I can get my own back.
Yeah.
And this I have to run off because you won't like it. This is a good old fashioned orthopaedic surgeon in Medway Towns called John Beavis. Great laugh. Fantastic bloke. He said to me once, trouble with orthopaedic surgeons, if you give them the afternoon off, you have to retrain them. Shall I run off?
There's many a joke about orthopedic surgeons.
Yeah.
What's the difference between an orthopedic surgeon and God? God doesn't think he's an orthopedic surgeon.
Yes.
Right, listen, my friend, you're on your deathbed many years from now, hopefully, but maybe next week, you never know.
Yeah.
Before you pass away and meet your maker, what are you going to say to your loved ones and your children all around you?
Buy my book. No, but seriously, challenge what you think is wrong. Critical thinking, critical analysis, and don't be sort of worrying about what people think of you, because that was my problem. I worried too much. And your elders, as I said before, do not necessarily know better. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. So you've got to sort of counter that with sort of the good things in life, communicating more deeply with people, being empathetic, discovering compassion, looking at nature and all those sorts of things. They're the good things in life. And be altruistic. Reject the idea that came in the 80s that Thatcherism, really. I'm all right, Jack, fuck you. I'm all right. There is no such thing as society. Reject that. Altruism is what you need.
Yeah.
That's that sort of message. And they won't listen, but still, it's worth a try.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful answer. I'm with you on that. Just be kind and nice to those around you.
Which our profession sort of pushed out of us. Just getting it back now. Now I'm leaving the profession behind. And I see you have. No problem.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, while I was sad and I was, I jumped as well as being pushed, I just didn't want to be part of that system anymore. I was getting really disillusioned. I left NHS because I was disillusioned, Paul. Yeah. I was so upset because I don't know how to explain it to you, but imagine you must have met someone that you really looked up to at some point, and then when you get to know them and they really let you down. Yeah. And it's more than just a bad person on the street, because you really wanted them to be this amazing person. You had this idea in your head. And when you then got to know them, you were like, what? I feel betrayed. And it was the same with me as an NHS. I didn't roll as a junior doctor. I was just in the system trying to pass the exams and climb the career ladder. And then you become the consultant, and then you become the clinical director, and then you go to all the management meetings, and then you see behind the curtain what it's all about. Yeah. I was disgusted, and I had to leave the NHS. For my patients, I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is a joke. And then I was equally disgusted in the private sector because I saw the encroachment of the insurance companies.
Yes.
Every 6 months, I would get another letter from an insurance company saying, oh, your practice is different from the average. And, if you don't change how you practice, we're going to have to restrict the patients coming to you, or we have to put a warning on the website that your practice, this is the kind of stuff they were doing to me. So I'd be like, well, fuck you. So, one insurance company went, then another insurance company went, then another. And then I was like, oh my God, this is getting quite difficult. Yeah. Because I've got overheads. I've got and then, when you're doing a private practice, I kid you not, from January to October, everything is tax and expenses. And it's only October, November, December, you get to keep any money that you earn.
Yeah.
It's not easy, especially when all the insurance companies are like, well, are you going to take it or leave it? And every single one of my colleagues would just take it.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I'll leave it. But then what I did was I created this beautiful boutique, and I would be like, well, I'm charging more, folks. But you get an hour. I'll do a second opinion. It's going to cost a lot more, but it's going to be like an hour and a half. And suddenly, I got into a really comfortable place. And I was like, this is how medicine should be practiced. Yeah. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then
Then it sabotaged everything,
But what I'm trying to say is I was an anomaly, and my colleagues thought I was weird.
Not average, not conforming. I mean, the classic Daily Mail headline, 50% of GPs are below average. I mean, what the fuck? And they think, oh, well, so they read the Daily Mail, oh, GPs are rubbish, because most of them are below average. 50% are above average. I mean, what is average? Do you know what average means?
Exactly.
And to counter, you're the bit where you look up to somebody and they let you down. There are people around where you don't give them a second look, but if you talk to them, dig deep into their, they're communicating more deeply with those people.
Yes.
They are worth talking to. Some of the older generation, they're written off.
Yes.
Sitting in nursing homes, but they've got a tale to tell.
Everyone's got a tale to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to them.
Yeah. Listen, I need to do a shout out to Poppy Bowler, my acupuncturist. She saved me. I need to do a shout out to Raj Mangatel, who's going to be a guest. He's head of spinal surgery at the Royal London. Came and visited me and went through my MRI scan, and he was like, you're not going to have an operation. You're not going to have an injection.
Good.
You're going to heal yourself, Ahmed.
Yeah.
And he practices just like me.
Yeah.
There are some good people out there, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah Jane, who's done Golding, who did the melt method on me. Amazing work.
I might need to see your acupuncture with my neck.
There's some great people out there.
Yeah.
There are some really good people. It's not
Yeah.
all bad.
No.
Well, listen, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for coming. So, everybody, deceit syndrome. Paul's not making any money from it. All profits go to helping, expose what's going on in the NHS and support groups who are trying to fight for it and restore it to what it should be. And what's the name of your new book?
It's called Your Money and Your Life. Not
Is
your money or your life, your money and your life.
Is it out yet?
It's hopefully in the autumn.
Okay.
Yeah. And a very basic premise is that everybody knows Attlee won the election after the war, introduced the National Health Service. What happens if that election was fiddled and Churchill won it instead and there was no Attlee? What happens then? And the story goes on from that premise. And you'd be surprised where we end up in,
Interesting.
present time.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. But I enjoyed writing it as well. I'm no author, but I enjoyed writing it.
You are an author. Yes, you are. You've written 2 books. Buddy, if that doesn't qualify you for an author, I don't know what it does. Listen, well done you. And well done for crafting a career outside of medicine. Well done for retiring early and campaigning. And well done for not just having an identity that I am a doctor, but you're just more than that. That's not usual. And sadly, I wish it was.
Yeah.
Too many people, doctors especially, put their identity in being a doctor when they should be so much more.
And it's forced out of you. A lot of hobbies forced out of you. I've got friends that retire and they just don't know what to do with themselves.
I know.
And sadly, which is something I can't understand, it's the status that they lose. They don't like losing. I didn't give a fuck about the status. That's all. Didn't impress me from the word go, even though I was the only doctor in the family. My dad said once, "Oh, well, that's good. Well done, boy."
Yeah, I think that's what you and I have in common. I'm from a working class. I was the exact same. I was like, I don't give a shit. It's like, people would be like, "Oh, once you Ahmed, you're so lovely and nice. When you get to when you become a doctor, you change." No, I didn't. Oh, but wait until you become a senior doctor. You won't be like this anymore. You won't be friendly and affable. No, I didn't. Yeah. But when you become a surgeon, it'll be different. No. When you become a consultant, no, I'm still the same. This is me.
Yeah. The product of your upbringing, basically, rather than having your personality bashed out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, I really enjoyed this chat. You're a good man. And
thank you.
Let's see where the future goes. And I'm a little bit more optimistic than you. I think it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, let's hope so.
All right. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts, and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations, and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor, and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence, and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and/or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.